Nanda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Paramahans Parivrajacharya Stotra Shada Shri Srimad Bhaya Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Paramahans Parivrajacharya Stotra Shada Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Vaishnav Guru Varga Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Shri Krishna's Kaviraj Thakur Ki Jai Shri Caitanya Caritamrita Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Nanda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol All Glory Assembled Devotees Hare Krishna All Glory Assembled Devotees Hare Krishna All Glory Assembled Devotees Hare Krishna All Glory Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga All Glory Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Nandana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gora Tushe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Hare Krishna, welcome back again to Sri Caitanya Caritamrita class. We are, of course, continuing in the Rai Ramananda Samvad. We're actually getting rather close to the end. I think we've maybe got another 2 or 3 weeks left before we conclude the Rai Ramananda Samvad, which might sound like a long time away, but actually at the rate that we're going, it's towards the concluding end, especially because we won't be discussing much. We will maybe wrap up the answers to the next few questions, the next few elements of the second question. We'll be wrapping those up pretty quickly because they're a bit esoteric. And what are those other extra elements of the question? Again, I'll repeat it every time. The second question of the Rai Ramananda Samvad, what was the first? The first question was, what is the ultimate goal of life? And the second is a question of tattva. What is Krishna Shurup? What is the form, qualities, characteristics of Krishna? Radhar Shurup. What are the forms, personality, characteristics, qualities, all sorts of things of Srimati Radharani? What is Rashototo? What is the tattva of rasa? What is the absolute conclusive truth about the devotional mellows? And then Prema Totorup. Prem Totorup. What is the form, the absolute form of Prem? And so, in order to answer this, Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, he has been going through, quoting various shastras. As always, this whole conversation, it is bedrocked, it is held in foundation by shastric concerns. Shastra is the standard by which any opinion is justified. I've made this point several times before, so I won't make it so much. But one's opinion is not valuable. One should not hear these sort of conversations and think, oh, therefore I can just say this and that, this and that. I can just say whatever my opinion is, and then we can go on. This is what I think devotional service is. So many people say. So many people have all these ideas, what they want to do, what they think is right, and they'll say, oh no, this and that. And so many apasiddhantas, so many incorrect conceptions come up. People might say, why do we need to know the Siddhanta so well? Devotion is a thing of the heart, Prabhu. Devotion is a question of my heart. Devotion is a question of what is held inside here, not what is up here. They might say like this. But actually, that is correct. Devotion is what comes from the heart. But what is normally thought of as what's coming from the heart is just lust, which is coming from the material conditioning. Devotion comes from the spiritualized heart, not the conditioned heart. When one is on the platform of having a spiritualized heart, then maybe they can say these things. But until then, the mind must be guided by the words of those people whose hearts are spiritualized. And when the mind is able to take that knowledge from those whose hearts are spiritualized, it can be used then to guide one's heart, which is very much not spiritualized. So it's necessary to have some information, some knowledge, and this knowledge comes again from Shastra. So Ramananda Rai, he's speaking, and he's just finished speaking about some various qualities of Krishna, beginning of course with tattva, the philosophical Aishvarya, the opulence. Krishna, Ishvara Parama Krishnaha Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govindaha Sarvakarana Karna. Like this, he has been elaborating as to the nature of Krishna's form. But these things are not the highest things regarding Krishna. They are important. We must know them. But they are not the highest thing. These things are very relevant to those of us who are identifying with this material body, which is 99% of people who are listening. Maybe. I don't actually know who's listening. It's possible everyone's a self-realized devotee listening. But if not, a huge chunk at least, a significant portion, I'll play it safe, a significant portion is still identifying with their body. And when we are still identifying with the body, we are identifying with this domain defined by bhayat, fear. Fear is what defines this place. Fear, insecurity, death, danger, disease, destruction. These are all the things which define the reality with which we dwell, if we believe ourselves to be dwelling in the material reality. And because of that, then we need to hear of power. Then we need to hear of Ishwar Parama, Parameshwar, the highest controller, the supreme Lord in all his glory. Because power is so necessary in a realm which is so dangerous as this material world. Power is where shelter is. Power is the most important thing in this world, because power helps us avoid the danger. And so, the best way to glorify Krishna, for those of us who are still occupying a material mental situation, is to identify Krishna as that all-powerful personality. Because he will save us with all of his power. He is Parameshwar and all of that. And then we can take shelter in him and we can relate to him. Because the way we understand everything is material. And so we understand the greatness of Krishna in terms of what we understand. Then when we get to a higher level of spiritual understanding, we come to the later things. But they must not be prematurely entered. That does not mean one thinks, oh, this is the secondary consideration, so now I must jump in to the primary one. No, one must first be ready. First deserve, then desire. And what is that secondary consideration? Well, it is the consideration. Now, what is the primary consideration? Beyond the idea of the material conception, because of the dangers, because of the sufferings, because of the anxieties of the material world, power is the greatest thing. So we must focus on power. That is what we see as greatness. It is power. Wow, the Prime Minister, very important. Actually, who cares who the Prime Minister is? He's just another person. But people, if they meet the Prime Minister, they'll say, oh, I met the Prime Minister. Why? Because they associate power with him. You meet a millionaire. What's a millionaire? Practically most millionaires are just animals, walking animals on two legs. Practically that's what the average millionaire or billionaire is. But if a person sees a millionaire or billionaire, Jeff Bezos, I think, is a famous one, the owner of Amazon, or Bill Gates, a rascal, all of rascals. But if one was to meet them, they would say, oh wow, I met Jeff Bezos, I met Bill Gates. They would say like this. Why? Money these days isn't even real. This is why we had the global financial crisis, because the banks were giving out money that didn't exist. And the reason why they could do this is because money is entirely given value by us. We're literally investing out our ahankar, our identification with that money. We identify with this, and therefore we give it value. That's the only value money has. Srila Prabhupada criticizes this in his purport. He says that the moving away from the gold standard is an extra element of the falsities of modern demonic civilization. And actually, you'll find some really great economists agree. Not that we care what the economists say, really. Srila Prabhupada's words are the beginning and final conclusions. But even some prominent economists very much agree that the moving away from the gold standard was disastrous. And it's not that we can't move back, actually. There's more than enough gold available. At least in America, they could move back to the gold standard. But they don't, because they want to live in their fictitious worlds where banks have the most authority. But anyway, so this money which isn't even real. And we see a billionaire, oh, I saw Bill Gates. Who cares? The reason why is because money means power. In Kali Yuga, money means power and authority. And therefore, we are attracted to such a thing. So then, to give the highest glory to Krishna, what do we find glorious? Power. And so when we see power in Krishna, then we say, wow, this is amazing. And this is a great way for us to worship, because we are purifying then this material understanding. And of course, it's not to say that power is bad. Krishna has lots of power. Or to say that even fixating on that mindset in all eternity is something that's bad. That's good, that's fine. Forget about being fine. The denizens of Vaikuntha, who are constantly meditating on Aishvarya, they are constantly embracing the omnipotency, the supreme controllership of Krishna. And they are perfect, nitya siddha, eternally liberated. They're siddha, perfected. So it's not a criticism. But higher than that, what is the greatest thing? What is the greatest thing in a domain where there is no fear? In the Bible it says, perfect love casteth out all fear. The domain where there is no fear, Vaikuntha, where there is no anxiety. This is what Vaikuntha means. In that domain, what is the highest thing? Love and beauty. Krishna consciousness is very much an embracing of the notion that beauty conquers power. All of the strength of power, of opulence, is conquered by the sweet beauty of Krishna. And this is why Rai Ramananda, he speaks first of Krishna's opulence, which is very valid, very real, not a preaching strategy. It is a perfect conclusion in of itself. But establishing that groundwork, he then builds up into something much higher. He speaks firstly of Satchidananda Tanu, that Krishna whose body is composed of Satchidananda. And then what does he speak of? Vrajendra Nandana, the sweet child of Nanda Maharaj. So we should understand like this, that higher principle, that conquest, wherein love, beauty, they all conquer fear. They conquer power itself. If power conquers fear, well, and love then conquers power, what to then speak of love and beauty conquering fear? That which conquers fear is conquered by love, by beauty. Power, which is what we associate with all conquests, control, all of this is destroyed. All of this is held under the heel of perfect, beautiful, blissful, sweet, wholesome, truly spiritual love. Which is why, then, it moves on to this discussion. These qualities of Krishna, these aspects of Krishner Swarup, these aspects are the beautiful ones, the ones of Lila, the ones of Krishna's sweet nature, which conquers all that which has been said before. And we will comment on this a little more, but we will keep on going now with our discussion. And yesterday we discussed a few texts. We actually only discussed one text, sorry, bite my tongue. Akhila Rasamrita Murtihi. Prasrimara Ruchi Rudha Taraka Palihi Kalita Shyama Lalito Radha Preyan Vidhur Jayati. Very important shlok to memorize. And then we spoke a bit about the varieties of meaning of that. And then we went on, Ramananda Rai, he's introducing now another idea. Shringa Rosoraj Moyomurti Dhoro Otoibo atma por jonto shorbo chitohor. Krishna is all attractive for devotees in all mellows. Krishna is attractive not only to all the devotees, but to himself as well. So, here there is a really sweet point, and that is a point I wanted to make, and this is a point that will be reinforced in the next pramana after the one supporting this text, which is, actually, we'll read that one as well, and then we'll speak of these two texts together. We'll read a bit, and then we'll comment on all of these texts collectively. So first, the text that is quoted is from Gita Govinda. And what does it say? Vishvesham anuranjanena janayannanandam indivara shreni shyamala komalai rupanayan angairananganso vamam svachandam vraja sundaribhir abhita pratyangam alingitaha shringara sakhi murtimaniva madhau mugdho hari kridati. My dear friends, just see how Sri Krishna is enjoying the season of spring. With the gopis embracing each of his limbs, he is like amorous love personified. With his transcendental pastimes, he enlivens all the gopis and the entire creation. With his soft bluish black arms and legs, which resemble blue lotus flowers, he has created a festival for Cupid. And Prabhupada writes a very short purport. This is a verse from the Gita Govinda. Text 1.11. And then what does Ramananda Rai say? He says another point. He wants to drive in. He's capturing this idea. This is speaking of how Krishna is all attractive. But how do we understand that Atma Paryanta, he is attractive even up to his own self? Lokhi Kandati, Kantadi, Obotarer horemon, lokhi adi nari goner kore akorshon. He also attracts Narayan, who is the incarnation of Sankarshan and the husband of the goddess of fortune. He attracts not only Narayan, but also all women, headed by the goddess of fortune, the consort of Narayan. And then what does he quote? He quotes from Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, chapter 89, text 58. Twijatmaja me yuvayor didrikshuna mayopanita bhuvidharma guptaye kalavatirna vavaner bharasuran hatveha bhuyas tvarayetam antime. Addressing Krishna and Arjuna, Lord Mahavishnu, the Mahapurush, said, I wanted to see both of you, and therefore I have brought the sons of the Brahmin here. Both of you have appeared in the material world to re-establish religious principles, and you have appeared here with all your potency. After killing all the demons, please quickly return to the spiritual world. And then we will stop here, and then we will continue to read a few more texts later on. I don't want to just read shlokas out continuously. We will discuss now. So, Krishna is attractive not only to all the devotees, but to himself as well. Krishna attracts even himself, even the form of Mahavishnu is drawn to him. But Krishna also attracts everyone. This is the beauty of Krishna. And in many ways, this mystery of how Krishna can attract himself is most resolved. Even in Krishna Lila, not just Vishnu, but Krishna will sometimes see his reflection in a puddle or somewhere. He'll see his reflection in a pond and he'll think, how beautiful. How mesmerizing. Who is this? So beautiful, so attractive. So Krishna, he is absorbed, even Krishna himself, not just his expansions, incarnations of Sankarshan, like Mahavishnu. Sometimes people say Mahavishnu, he is the incarnation of Krishna. And they're not wrong, but in some ways it would be better to say he is the expansion of Balaram. Because we know there's the Chatur Vyuha. This is discussed in the Adi Lila of Caitanya Caritamrita, so His Grace Ghanshyam Govinda Prabhu would have discussed it. But there's the two Chaturvyuhas. They expand out. There's the Maha Chaturvyuha and then there's the secondary Chaturvyuha. And from there expands out Mahavishnu. So Mahavishnu, he is expanding out from them, but all of them, they really just come out of Balaram. Practically the majority of the expansions are all just coming out from Balaram. Balaram is how these things are done. Balaram in his service attitude. He is very happy to do this. And of course Balaram is Krishna himself. Balaram and Krishna, they're both Vishnu Tattva. The only difference is Balaram is a different color. Besides that, he is virtually 100% the same. This is discussed in teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and we will discuss it later on in the Caitanya Caritamrita, teachings to Sanatana Goswami. So, all of these forms, we will discuss that a little later, but this is to speak of that infatuating, beautiful form of Krishna, Shama Sundar, so beautiful. But this idea is most fully resolved in Caitanya Mahaprabhu, because Caitanya Mahaprabhu, he is running mad to see Krishna. He is made mad by the beauty of Krishna. He is running and running after Krishna. When he saw Jagannath, when he saw Jagannath at the Ratha Yatra, he was so completely absorbed, he was breaking down into tears. We hear all these ecstasies, Mahaprabhu jumping up and down like a rod, sometimes passing out and fainting, crying in the Gambhira. His teeth, they become loose and seem to fall out. He is scraping his face against the wall. He is crying and crying and crying. All of these things are happening because he loves Krishna. His mind is stolen by Krishna. So often he is described as matta, as mad. Krishna's Kaviraj Thakur likes this word. Mahaprabhu is mad, like a maddened lion. But what is he mad for? What is he mad after? He's mad after Krishna. So Mahaprabhu is so fully representing this idea that even Krishna himself is absorbed, is attracted by Krishna. Because Krishna himself thought, look, I find myself attractive. I find that I agitate my own mind. But I do not know how my devotees' minds are agitated when they see me. Their ecstasy seems far greater than what happens with me when I just see my reflection in the pond. So I must taste this. I must be able to taste this. This is one of the reasons why Mahaprabhu, why Krishna takes the form of Mahaprabhu, why Krishna steals the mood of Srimati Radharani and comes down as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because of this. This idea. Krishna is attracted to himself, but he does not feel the intensity that his devotees do. He does not feel the intense ecstasy that his devotees do. So this was the point. Anyways, so then we hear this text quoted from the Gita Govinda. Now, this is where we know this chapter is starting to go in a direction where we won't be commenting verse by verse, as I have been so far in the Rai Ramananda Samvad. Because the Gita Govinda is a very, very high Shastra. It is written by, we know, Jayadeva Goswami, very famous. Everyone loves Jayadeva Goswami. His works are incredibly famous. He is one of the great proponents of the idea that Dashavatar is coming from Krishna. Obviously this is true in Shastra, but he was one of the ones to really push this idea. Jayadeva Goswami, very elevated devotee from the Orissa area. And so he has a very close relationship with Jagannath, actually. But anyways, the reason why the mention of this text is to signal this to us is Gita Govinda is probably one of the highest Shastras possibly conceivable. Not high as in we won't get the final conclusion without it. High as in it is high out of the grasp of anyone but the highest devotees. Gita Govinda, highly spread out. Everyone is speaking it in India. But this is actually not proper. This is not proper at all. Gita Govinda, if somebody starts reciting, for the majority of us, we should get up and leave. We should not hear such things. Because Gita Govinda speaks of very esoteric things that we should not understand. Which we should understand, but which we cannot. We should not attempt to understand. And Jayadeva Goswami himself says this. Actually, I have here a text from the Gita Govinda, and I'm not hypocritical to say that we shouldn't hear Gita Govinda and then quote it, because this text very much speaks of the sort of person who should be hearing and reading Gita Govinda. Yadi hari smarane sarasam mano, yadi vilasa kalasu kutuhalam, madhura komala kanta padavilim, Shrinu tada Jayadev Saraswatim. If you are hankering to be deeply absorbed in contemplation on Sri Hari, if your mind is enchanted by remembrance of him, and if your heart is yearning to taste the mellows of his delightful pastimes, then listen to the beautiful, elegant, and honey-sweet poetry eloquently composed by the poet Jayadev. It is when we are genuinely hankering. It is the same thing as with Raganuga. When there is greed for these things, a genuine greed, then one can enter it. If our mind is genuinely enchanted by remembrance of him, and our heart is genuinely yearning to taste, then maybe we can begin to think of such things. But it needs to be genuine. And most of the times, it unfortunately is not genuine. It unfortunately is not proper. It is not the appropriate attitude. So Jayadeva Goswami himself, he has very clearly delineated who can read this book, who should read this book. It is not, oh, I like Radha, Krishna. It is not, oh, I'm chanting now 2 rounds a day. I've just, started up, taking up devotional service. It's not, oh, I like to do this and that. I had a few examples, but I don't want to seem like I'm criticizing anyone, because I'm not. I'm just trying to make the point that this is for people who are at a very, very high spiritual level. And so because of this, the Gita Govinda is being quoted as, we should take the advice of Jayadeva Goswami. We should realize that these conversations are starting to get in rather esoteric grounds. So as we conclude these last few sections, speaking of Krishna Sharup, then we will briefly discuss what remains, and then we will continue on to the rest of Mahaprabhu's South India tour. Just in case anyone's forgotten the context of Rai Ramananda Sambad, we've been discussing it for so long. This whole thing is happening within the tour of Mahaprabhu around South India. So we'll hear about the other tirthas that he visits, all of the preaching that he does. Very nectarian chapter, chapter 9. Anyways. So, but Jayadeva Goswami, in Gita Govinda, actually there are a few things which are relevant to us. Firstly, what do we sing every night, every morning, every arti pretty much? We sing Nrsimha, Nrsimha arti. What do we sing? Keshavadhrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Tavakara Kamalavare Nakamadbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubhringam. And then Keshavadhrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Who has written this? None other than Jayadeva Goswami. The Dashavatar Stotra is a part of the Gita Govinda. So we sing this every night. So it's not that Gita Govinda is untouchable. But in general, it should not be touched until we are at a very high level. The Dashavatar Stotra is fine. Another famous song that is sung is Shrita Kamala. Shrita Kamala, like that. But actually, Srila Prabhupada said we should not sing this so much. If you look up in Veda base, Prabhupada has written one letter saying we should better not to sing Shrita Kamala. Shrita Kamala is very high. So even Shrita Kamala, we might feel, let's not be unreasonable. Some parts of Gita Govinda are appropriate. Srila Prabhupada, even with that bhajan, he expressed quite some hesitancy, quite some caution. So we should also be cautious. Cautious to enter into such a thing. If even a bhajan, which is rather commonly known, Srila Prabhupada said, better not, better to be reserved with such things. We should think of the rest of the book, which is so high, how inappropriate it would be for us to read it. Anyways, so, but then who is this person? Because now we're entering into a zone. Bhagavatam is still being quoted. Gita hasn't really been quoted in a while, but Bhagavatam is still being quoted. But the texts are becoming more rasic. Before we were outside the 10th canto, various 11th canto like this. Now it's only texts from the 10th canto. And from devotional poetry, and from Goswami Granthas. The books are getting more and more elevated, the Pramanas. But they're all Shastra. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada actually makes this point. Some people will say, hey, how can you quote Gita Govinda? He said Shastra. Shastra means Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Tharvaveda, Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Puranas, Mahabharat, Ramayan. Just quoting all of these things. These are what Shastra is. Actually, you'll find some groups with nonsense philosophies. There's one group. They rhyme with it begins with a and rhymes with Riya Samaj. And they will say, oh, this Shastra is not bona fide, this Shastra is not bona fide. They'll say Bhagavad Gita is not an actual scripture, this is not actual scripture. And they'll say just base everything on the 4 Vedas. But the version of the 4 Vedas we've gone through. We've gone through and we've cut out all of the parts which are not proper. So Gita, it has nice messages, but it's still not correct. We need to go back. What did the Vedas say? So they were really popular for a while. Now they've reduced. And they were popular because it was essentially just a fanatic Christian mentality being applied to the Vedic corpus. Actually, their whole group, what to do? They was preaching nonsense pretty much. Because they had an aggressive view of this. Forget about just saying only the Puranas, only Gita. They were saying only our chopped up Hindi translations of the Rig Veda. Actually, interestingly enough, the group had some political problems. A lot of their Punjabi followers left when their founder, Dayanand Saraswati, endorsed Hindi as the main language that they should all be using. But anyways, I digress. But actually, it is not even just the Puranas. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur makes a point. What are the Vedas? What are the Puranas? What are the Itihasas, Mahabharata and Ramayana? They're all just the recorded words of the pure devotees. So when the pure devotees compose texts again, in line with the Vedas, in line with the previous revelation, with the previous received knowledge, when they write these things, then how can we say this is any less Shastra? What is Bhagavatam but the recorded words of Shukadeva Goswami? What is Caitanya Caritamrita but the recorded words then of Krishna Saviraj Thakur? If Bhagavatam is Shastra, and it is, then Chaitanya Bhagavat should also be Shastra, and it is. And if Chaitanya Bhagavat is Shastra, then so should Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and it is. And so should Caitanya Caritamrita, and it is. And so should Gita Govinda, and it is. But we need to see the point that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is making here. Is that Shastra are the words that are coming out from the pure devotee's transcendental mouth. So then who is Jayadeva? Who is Jayadeva? Not just to give Shastra, but to give a Shastra on the highest thing. And I'll tell you, he's very qualified to do so. I'm not challenging him. Instead, I'm opening up the question so that we can speak something of the glories of Jayadeva Goswami. So Jayadev, Jayadeva Goswami, his birthday is Jayadev Jayanti. And Jayadev Jayanti, it is actually, it is celebrated on Akshay Tritiya, the day when Ratha Yatra, the Rath for Ratha Yatra, the chariot of Jagannath, when its construction begins, this is the day that Jayadev's birthday is commemorated. Because Jayadev actually had a very intimate relationship with Jagannath, which is very appropriate. Jagannath is a very esoteric deity. Jagannath is a very high deity, actually. Jagannath is very merciful. He can appear to everyone and anyone, and he can relate to them accordingly. But when the highest devotees come to him, he can relate in the highest manner to them. So, Jagannath, he is embodying the mood of separation. He is Vipralambha Raj. He is the king of Vipralambha Kshetra, the Dham, the Kshetra of the mood of separation. So very, very high things. So because of this mercy, this merciful relationship that Jayadev has, he is able to write on such high topics. And this also gives him a nice relationship to Mahaprabhu. Because Mahaprabhu, we know, so much loves Jagannath. So when he was born, on this day, Akshaya Tritiya, he was born to Bhojadev and Shri Vamadevi. These are his parents. And throughout his life, no matter what, he was always in some way connected to Jagannath Swami. So, it was on Jagannath's order that Jayadev married his wife. Who was his wife? His wife was Padmavati Devi. And the pastime that happens, this pastime is not mentioned in Shastra, it's not mentioned in Gita Govinda, but it is mentioned in the local tradition surrounding Jayadev Goswami in Jagannath Puri. So, one year, a Brahmin named Dev Sharma and his wife, they visited Sri Nilachala Dham, Nilachala, the blue hill, from their home in the southern part of Kalinga. They performed lots of austerities, they chanted mantras, and they presented a lotus flower to Lord Jagannath as decoration. And above all, they offered heartfelt prayers for a baby as they were childless. So in a dream, the Lord appears to this Brahmin named Dev Sharma. And he says, I promise you, your wish for a child will be fulfilled. Delighted, they took a vow, this Brahmin couple. And they said, Oh Purushottam, if out of your mercy we are blessed with a male child, then we will engage him in your service. And if you send us a daughter, we will offer her at your lotus feet in the Sri Mandir as a Devadasi. We know the Devadasis, they're the girls who are chanting, who are dancing in the for Jagannath. They were a very special position. We'll discuss it a little later because some devotees of Mahaprabhu, they have some interactions, but we'll get to that in later pastimes. So then, of course, they made this promise. Boy or girl, we will dedicate it. We will dedicate him or her to your service, O Purushottam, O Jagannath. So then, they had a child, and it was, gender reveal party was pink, was a girl. And so, having this daughter, they obtained their daughter by giving a lotus, a Padma, to Jagannath. We said they went to Jagannath and they offered him a lotus. And therefore they named their daughter Padmavati. Padmavati. And then, to honor their promise, they brought the young girl to Puri and prepared to offer her as a Devadasi. However, that night, as they were just about to offer her away, the Supreme Lord appeared again in a dream. And he told Dev Sharma, the father of Padmavati, he told to offer Padmavati to his dear devotee, a very young Brahmin who goes by the name Jayadeva, whom can be found in the morning under a banyan tree, chanting Krishna's name. In the morning, go near the Sri Mandir. You will find a banyan tree, and under that banyan tree, he will be chanting Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So, following this order, Dev Sharma took his daughter, and Jayadev, who had no desire to get married. He had no home or assets. All that he had were his dear and beloved Radha Madhava deities. And yet, seeing this girl being offered in marriage, he was saying, what? I'm an ascetic. I don't have a house. How can I be a grihastha without a griha? How can I be a grihastha if I do not have a griha? So then, if I were to get married, I have to become a grihastha. What to do? This is weird. What's going on? I have no intention on getting married. And so Jayadev, he said, please go away. Take the girl. Take her anywhere else. I will take her. If you can't take her, I will take her. Whatever location, whatever destination she wishes to go, take her. Gone. But her father, he was determined. He was a great devotee of Jagannath. And he was saying, no, you must marry her. Jagannath has told me. And so then he said, I will leave you, Padmavati. This is your husband. I'm done. And then he left. And Jayadev, he was saying, come on, just go now. Just leave. And I'll send you anywhere else. Wherever you want to go, I have connections. I'll send you. And Padmavati, she became very, very sad upon hearing this. Her heart was being torn up. Sweet girl. Poor thing. And her eyes began to well up with tears. And she said, Brahmin, you are my husband. This is Vedic times, so there was a different understanding of what the husband is. These days, the husband is the person that is complained about 24/7. And the husband in turn has a different understanding of the wife. These days, what is a wife? But to be seen as a restraint, who was complained about 24/7. In Vedic times, they did not have this. They did not have this understanding, this low understanding, that one's spouse who they are married to is meant for your sense gratification until you're fed up, and then you divorce them. Oh, I don't love you anymore. Oh, I don't feel it anymore. Like this. And then divorce. No, this is not the Vedic understanding. And so this is not the attitude that Padmavati had. What attitude did she have? She said, you have become my Lord and my Master, my all in all. If you do not accept me, I will fall down at your feet and I will kill myself. I will give up my life. Hearing this, the devotee is what? The devotee is very merciful. The Vaishnava is merciful. The Vaishnava sees the suffering of all people and accepts it as his own suffering. And seeing the suffering of this poor girl, this poor Padmavati, he said, okay, this is fine. I cannot abandon you. The devotee, how could he? How can the devotee, with the softness of the devotee's heart, abandon a person in such a state? And so then he took on this responsibility. And then Jayadev Goswami, he married her. Then he said, okay, now properly I am your husband. So, with this basis though, of fulfilling the order of Jagannath, this wedding, this marriage was very fruitful. This is what Vaishnav marriage should be. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said this. Devotee marriage is not, hey, I really wanted my license for sex gratification, so I'm going to marry someone, and then now I can, burn a little steam, and get those desires out of my system, and then bust. Actually, this is not Vaishnav marriage. This is merely a side element of it, that is a license for people who are not self-controlled enough. But actually, really everyone should be self-controlled enough. That license isn't to engage in illicit or even in sexual activity regularly. This is a nonsense idea. Absolute nonsense. It's only for procreation. Srila Prabhupada said this. Is the big slogan now family planning, Planned Parenthood in America, New South Wales family planning here. What many people won't say about these organizations is they're all some of the most evil organizations on earth. Not only do they offer countless abortions and therefore are some of the most sinful and evil places on earth. If anyone is working in any of these industries, they carry some of the most severe sins on their heads. But they were started on the principles of eugenics and racial cleansing. Not nice things. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, she explicitly said a goal of this family planning project is to make sure that less Africans are born on earth, that they can all be killed in the womb, they can all be aborted. In New South Wales, the clinics were founded. Why? So that children who did not have perfect genes could be killed, so that we could keep the white race pure. And people will say, oh, that was before, now they're nice. They're just as bad now. Some of the most evil people in the world, actually the most evil people in the world, according to the Vedas, are the people who are killing cows and the people who are working in the abortion industry. So this is why maybe devotees sometimes will get really excited about all these welfare efforts, all of these maybe nicely seeming organizations. They're fighting against world global suffering, fighting against all problems in the world. But most of them endorse and promote these companies which are facilitating the mass murder of babies in the womb. So devotees should think, what are the demons that we are supporting? Devotees will make a big deal. Do not support this politician, do not support that politician, he's a demon, how could you? And yet they'll so happily go behind big organizations that are promoting the mass genocide of babies. This should be thought about. We should be more intelligent about which agendas we can support. Not that we can be sinless in all our activities. We know, so famously in Bhagavad Gita, where there's fire, there will always be a bit of smoke. Does not mean we should not execute the activity. But especially with mundane welfare work, it's not necessary. It is not like the fire. It's just all smoke, really, but it's smoke with a smokier part. Really a waste of time. So many organizations, White Ribbon, the UN, all of these groups, they're all promoting abortion. So they're all rascals, fools, demons. Srila Prabhupada said the United Nations, just a bunch of barking mad dogs. All rascaldom. All demons. Anyways, so I went on a bit of a tangent, but Srila Prabhupada said family planning. Our family planning is when you want a child, according to the samskaras, you reproduce and then you create a child and you train them up in devotional service and you take them back home, back to Godhead. And when you do not want a child, you do not engage in sexual activity. This is our family planning. This is the standard. Many devotees will come up with lots of excuses. Oh, it's too hard, too hard. It's actually just as hard now as it ever was. It's just excuses to not live up to the standard. That's all it is. An ocean of excuses. It's not that the desire for such sense gratification has become stronger in the past centuries. It's always been strong. People are just weak and not actually committed to going back home, back to Godhead. So therefore, they're happy to break the regulative principle and not act on the standard and platform that Srila Prabhupada very clearly elaborated. So, that is the true Vaishnav marriage. The true Vaishnav marriage is one built upon nurturing each other. It is built on nurturing each other's spiritual lives. And this is the marriage that Padmavati and Jayadeva had. They very much helped each other grow in spiritual life. They very much helped each other nourish each other's Krishna consciousness. They are very much model the role of the devotee wedding, the devotee marriage. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was always used as an example, grihastha. People will say, here is an ideal grihastha, and what is he saying is the ideal? Not that you have fun. Oh, it means that I can go on cute dates. Not that cute dates are inherently bad, although they're not the most ideal things in the world. But and not that, now can do this or that. Go on cute dates and get this part of me out of my system. To a degree, it's that, to take care of one's baseline emotional needs. But really, the essential part of Vaishnav marriage is also spiritual life. Is also spiritual life, to facilitate each other's development in Krishna consciousness. While also, of course, taking care of each other's material needs. I don't want to overemphasize the point, not that you should be cold and callous and never hug one's spouse or something. Of course, we should take care of the emotional needs of one another, but at times it can be lost. The main goal is that these needs are being taken care of so that mutually together the couple can grow in their Krishna consciousness. So, on that note, we talked about Jayadeva marrying his wife Padmavati, and we will speak a little bit more tomorrow about the further pastimes of Jayadeva with Jagannath, and then we will continue to speak about these texts which have been quoted by Rai Ramananda in the Rai Ramananda Samvad in this 8th chapter of the Madhya Lila of Caitanya Caritamrita. We will continue to speak on those pastimes, and then we'll continue to speak on these verses, and then we will soon be concluding the Rai Ramananda Samvad. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Rai Ramananda ki jai, Shri Rai Ramananda Samvad ki jai, Shri Krishna's Kaviraj Thakur ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Caritamrita ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhya vicha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.